Hey guys, what's up? My name is Alyce, and I am Exiled Power's Healing Priest. I am back with another Legion Dungeon video. This time it is for Black Rook Hold. Please keep in mind that this is beta, so things are subject to change, so if you're watching this at a later date there may be some differences. And I'm also doing this on Heroic, so if you're doing this on Mythic difficulty there may be some ability changes and the numbers will definitely be different. Third, I am doing this as discipline. I've had a little bit of practice at this point, so it goes fairly smoothly at this point. So Black Rook Hold is carved from the greatest mountain of Val'sharah by ancient elven masons. Black Rook Hold stood as a bulwark against the Burning Legion during the War of the Ancients. The nigh impregnable fortress is also the ancestral home of Lord Kur'talos Ravencrest, one-time mentor of Illidan himself. But since the latest Legion attack, a strange dark energy emanates from the hold and restless dead plague the surrounding lands. So as you can see, it is a lot of undead throughout this. It's a lot of narrow hallways as you go through the hold. Yeah. So the first boss that we are going to be coming up on is the Amalgam of Souls. Immense soul energy was released when Gul'dan conducted the ritual to sever Illidan's soul from his body at Black Rook Hold. This energy brought the souls of the Ravencrest clan back to their ancestral home, and residual soul energy has merged them into a massive monstrosity. So he battles players until reaching 50% health, at which point he ruptures, splitting into the tortured souls of the Ravencrest ancestors. So he does have two phases. In the first phase, he has 3 abilities. The first is a tank mechanic. It is Reap Soul. He cuts targets in front of him to their very soul, inflicting 1 million shadow damage and increasing damage taken by 20% for 30 seconds. On heroic difficulty and higher, this effect does stack. His second ability is Swirling Scythe. He throws a scythe towards a player, inflicting 287,900 physical damage and knocking back any players it comes into contact with. So you'll see it'll spawn on you and you just move out of the area. It doesn't follow you or anything, so it's just a static AoE there. His third ability in the first phase is Soul Echoes. He fragments a player's soul, causing them to leave behind soul echoes. These echoes detonate, inflicting 356,500 shadow damage to all nearby players. So these, once you have this ability cast on you, you basically just run around the room, leaving the echoes behind as you run, and just stay away from them, and they will disappear on their own. In his second stage, he has 2 abilities. The first is Call Souls, and he lures the restless souls in the Ravencrest crypts towards him, and if they reach him, they will grant him Soul Gorge. Soul Gorge is when he absorbs a soul, he destroys it and increases the damage inflicted by Soul Burst by 25%. And Soul Burst is his second ability in the second phase, and he bursts and inflicts 810,000 shadow damage to all players and releases the most powerful spirits of Lord Ravencrest's ancestors. So you will see he is in phase 1 here. And once we get him to 50%, there he calls the souls, and they come towards him. So I would assume in a mythic or higher difficulty, you would want to kill as many of these souls as you can to try to limit the amount of damage that he does by his soul burst. However, in heroic difficulty, you can just kind of tunnel the boss. It's not really that big of a deal. And here he's going to cast Soul Burst, and you'll see I don't have shields on anybody. It really doesn't do much of anything. It's maybe a quarter of each player's HP. So he's fairly easy on heroic. So while we are making our way to the second boss, I will go over that as disc here. I am using the level 100 talent Grace, which I believe is pretty much the go-to talent for 5-mans because it does increase your non-atonement healing, or mainly just Shadow Mend. In the level 15 tier, I am using Castigation, which increases the amount of bolts that Penance fires by 1. I know in some of my earlier videos I was going with the Penitent, but I really wasn't using it on the other players that often, so it was kind of a waste. This way I get more DPS out of it and I get more healing out of it, and it works fairly well. I am using Divine Star mainly because it's a dungeon and I don't really want to use Halo in a dungeon and pull a bunch of stuff that we are not trying to fight. So Divine Star is just a little bit easier to control, and I can use it more often. So there are a couple world quests that are in here. I don't believe we're on it now, but there are some. One of them I believe is actually in the room that we just are fighting that spider near, where you have to go in and you have to click some eggs. There is a treasure at some point here. When we get to the top of the stairs, I believe we do go over and grab the treasure as well.
Beware.
So this section does have a bit of trash, and it is easy to get lost. I've had groups that go into those different rooms, going up the stairs, and then some that don't. I don't believe you have to kill everything that's in those as you go up. I think you can skip them. I've seen it done both ways. So this named guy that comes down is not one of the bosses. However, you do have to kill him to get to the next boss.
Beware. Beware.
It doesn't really do much of anything. So the next boss that we will be coming up on is Illysanna Ravencrest. She is the daughter of Lord Ravencrest, imprisoned for millennia in the Vault of the Wardens shortly after the War of the Ancients. She found herself free after Maeve released the demon hunters from their prison. Returning to her ancestral home, she has sacrificed everything, including her very soul, to defend what she could not during the War of the Ancients.
Beware.
She also has 2 phases. She is a demon hunter. So her first phase is Vengeance, and she has 3 abilities in this phase. First is Vengeful Shear. It's a deadly attack shearing the target, inflicting 1.5 million physical damage. Additionally, it increases damage taken by 50% for 25 seconds if the target is not protected with active mitigation, and the effect stacks. So that is a tank-only mechanic, and you want to make sure that you are using your active mitigation on that. Her second ability is Dark Rush. She fixes her gaze on players. After a short time, she dashes between them, inflicting 137,700 physical damage and leaving a blazing trail in her wake. This trail inflicts 291,600 fire damage every 2 seconds when you stand in it. Her third ability in this phase is Brutal Glaive. She inflicts 243,000 physical damage immediately and 113,400 physical damage every 2 seconds for 30 seconds to a targeted player, bouncing to any other nearby players. Her second phase is Fury, and she has 3 abilities there as well. The first is Eye Beams. She fires a beam of fell power that follows a player, leaving behind patches of fell-blazed ground. The fell-blazed ground inflicts 282,900 fire damage every 1 second to any player inside of it. And the other 2 are actually the adds that she spawns there. The first is the Risen Vanguard, which has Bone Crushing Strike, which inflicts 340,300 physical damage and stunning all players in a cone in front of the Vanguard for 4 seconds. The second add there is the Arcanist, which has Arcane Blitz, and he inflicts 324,000 arcane damage and increases the caster's damage done by 50% for 10 seconds, and the effect stacks. So as you can see, we didn't really kill the adds. I'm sure on Mythic difficulty you would want to kill those because they would do more and more as you're going. So as we're going through here, you do want to make sure you're not pulling too much. These runes can get kind of hairy if you pull a lot, although it looks like we pulled one of the pats with this, which is alright because there's not a lot of bigger mobs, but those Wrath Guards really can hurt. So this boss that we are coming up on here is Smashspite the Hateful. He's a brutal, imposing Morgue lieutenant. He led the Legion's invasion of Blackrock and commanded defense of the keep from the air via his colony of Fellbats. He has 4 abilities. The first is Earth-Shaking Stomp. He stomps the ground, inflicting 440,700 physical damage to all players and knocking them back. The second ability is Hateful Gaze. He focuses his gaze on a target and performs a hateful charge in the direction of the affected player when Hateful Gaze expires. Beware. Hateful Charge impacts the first player he comes into contact with, inflicting 908,000 physical damage, knocking them back, and increasing their damage taken from Hateful Charge by 100% for 1 minute. His third ability is Brutality. His damaging melee attacks grant him brutality in proportion to the damage done. When he reaches 100 brutality, he will unleash a brutal haymaker at his current target. Brutal haymaker is when he punches his current target, inflicting 1.7 million physical damage and increasing damage taken by 50% for 10 seconds. His fourth and final ability is Call of the Fellbat. He calls down a Fellbat, and the frequency of that continues, increases as the encounter continues. The Fellbats drop pools of vomit, bile. These pools inflict 446,000 fire damage to any players who come into contact with it. So basically on that fight, you just, when you get Hateful Charged, you just want to try to not get hit by it again, which can be avoided even if you get the Hateful Gaze debuff, it can be avoided by somebody else standing in front of you. So the final boss in this dungeon is Lord Kur'talos Ravencrest. He is the Lord of Blackrock and was commander of the Caldari Resistance during the War of the Ancients until he was assassinated by Verathen under the orders of Queen Ashara. Millennia later, Gul'dan's foul soul magic has awoken Ravencrest's soul and those of his ancestors from their eternal repose. The Legion, seeking revenge, gleefully forced his soul into his body and mesmerized him, forcing him to eternally relive the horrors of the War of the Ancients. He does have 2 phases. Stage 1 is Lord of the Keep. He has 3 abilities. The first is Unerring Shear. It's a deadly attack, shearing the target, inflicting 1 million physical damage and causing them to bleed for 37,400 damage every 2 seconds, and that is a tank-only ability. Second ability is Whirling Blade. He throws a glaive at a targeted player, traveling back and forth from the position it was thrown. The glaive inflicts 607,600 physical damage and knocks back any targets that it touches. And the third ability is actually an add. The add has 2 abilities. The first is Dark Blast, which inflicts 1.4 million shadow damage to all enemies in a line in front of the caster and knocks them back. So you just want to not be in front of him, which is that Dark Blast right there. The second is Shadow Bolt, which you can see him casting. It inflicts 202,500 shadow damage. Second phase is Vengeance of the Ancients. First ability is Legacy of the Ravencrest. He calls on the power of his ancestors to grant the party strength, increasing damage done, healing done, and health by 300%. Second one is actually the ad that he pulls out there, which has 4 abilities. The first is Stinging Swarm. He envelops the target in a swarm of stinging insects, inflicting 349,000 physical damage every 1 second. Has a chance to also stun the target for 0.5 seconds when doing damage, and players can attack the swarm and must kill it to remove its effect. Second ability is Cloud of Hypnosis. He creates a cloud of hypnotic gas, causing anyone who enters it to be put to sleep. Taking damage or leaving the cloud will remove the effect. Third is Dreadlord's Guile. He splits into several images who each cast Dark Obliteration in sequence, and Dark Obliteration, as you can see there, inflicts 3 million shadow damage to all enemies in a line in front of the caster and knocks them back, so you really do not want to get hit by that. Last is Shadow Bolt Volley. He launches a volley of shadow energy towards all players, inflicting 984,400 shadow damage. So that is Black Rook Hold. Please remember, if you have any questions, you can leave them in the comment section below and I will answer them as best I can. If you like the video, hit like below and subscribe to our channel as we will be putting out more. And as always, thank you for watching and we'll see you in the next one.